like to welcome Megan Johnston, new director of the model, and I'm delighted that you're all here as well at this informal forum, discussion, talk, platform for Megan to, to talk about her vision for the model and her practice in general. And it'll also be a forum as well afterwards if you want to ask some questions as well. Because there's a lot of people here, different stakeholders, people representing different art forms, from music to visual art to performance. So if there's anything you'd like to touch on in terms of Megan's vision, we can do that afterwards as well. So I suppose today is where we have today's talk, but also later, I just want to announce as well that we do have a lecture series with Philip Shields, who's lectured in Aarhus in Denmark and in Copenhagen. He has an MA in History of Ideas, and we're offering that actually free to students. So all you need to do is show your student ID, and we'll be able to go to that lecture series over 5 weeks on Thursday evenings for free. And it'll take you from modernism and the avant-garde movement right up to the present day. So it's great to get that effective background in terms of art and movements. So Megan has been working in the States for, well, her practice really actually is over 20, even 25 years perhaps.
Just turned 45.
From what's wonderful, I suppose, about Megan's practice is she really has worked from the ground up. She was telling me earlier that she worked in the different departments. She worked as an invigilator, as an intern, and has grown her practice from the grassroots up, and has really, I suppose, a lens on all of the different aspects of what a museum or an art gallery or an art practice can be in terms of an artist or collectively or in terms of community. So that idea of, when Megan talks about the poorest museum or porosity or permeable, is something that I think is coming from that experience of being in all of those different places and having touched on them. She's just come from Minneapolis Art and Design School, where she has been a lecturer and has also currently been working as an independent curator. But Megan also has a strong history of working in Ireland and in Northern Ireland, where she worked in Portadown as well for 10 years. So that's just kind of giving you a background to Megan and her practice. Megan will be with us here as director for a number of years. 4 or 5 years hopefully, and within that period of time, we'd like to see that there will be a certain vision and a type of curatorship and social engagement in terms of practice. So Megan, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Marley. Yeah, thank you. Oh yeah. It was really hard organizing today's talk because I knew there would be so many different people in the audience. So tomorrow is the AGM for the board members and other constituencies, and so they can get the boring part of the talk. Hopefully today will be a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to talk about myself and my practice and the vision that I want to employ here at the model. Let me talk about how we set this up during the discussion. Marie-Louise is generous to chair today's talk, but also we're going to dialogue a little bit about the importance of education in the model. I guess this is one of the images that I wanted to start with. I know it's kind of one of those made-up ones from an architect, right? About what the model could look like. But this kind of lays out who I am and what I'm about, which is about rebuilding, reimagining, and reconnecting the model to the community, locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. And as Marie said, I've actually been doing this with me for nearly 30 years. I counted some of those crazy curatorial projects as a teenager. But it's been based on my practice, which has been developed over the past 15 years, called slow curating, about permeable spaces and about open and collaborative approach. So I'm a little nervous. There's so many. Bear with me. But this is what I'm going to talk about. And I think for those of you that know me, there's a couple in here, like Ronnie. He's heard this before, so I guess we know I'll talk to that wall about my passion, which is curatorial practice and connecting with communities. I thought it might be useful to go back a little bit and tell you a little bit about who I am and how my practice and my work has been developed. I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, well, Stillwater, Minnesota, if anybody has been there. And I've worked as an intern, a docent, a low-paid museum lackey, a volunteer, all different kinds of things, all the way through curatorial education, marketing, development, directorships, etc. So I really have done almost everybody's job, including the accountant, which I never want to do again. Luckily we have notes, so I don't have to do that. But I've done my time in the field, as we like to say, at the Walker Art Center, both as a docent and intern, and as an independent curator at the Weissman Art Museum, which is to the second picture, and that's Frank Gehry's first museum. Lots of debate and discussion with architects. Are there any architects in the and that'll come back, the Weissman, so that's at the University of Minnesota. I did time in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, not as a curator, but as a project manager for publications and editorial. So I worked with everybody from conservators to artists to curators, etc., educationalists. It was a fantastic time. Then I met Gary, who's my husband. He's from Belfast, West Belfast actually, and we decided to leave New York. I don't know who but Gary got lost in the subway a couple too many times, and we decided clearly we needed to live in Ireland, and the position in Portadown opened up, and I landed in Portadown. So for those of you, you probably all know Portadown better than I did when I first came in there, but it ended up being one of the best and most important 8 years of my life. It was there that we did several amazing projects, including one from Ronnie. Here. So 3 places have really informed my practice over the past 10 years. And it also happens that I have been using this curatorial practice and this work to write and finish a PhD at the University of Ulster in curatorial practice and new museology. And that's actually a word, museology, but it's been fantastic. So I was in Portadown, Atlanta, Georgia, or just outside of Atlanta, which is about an hour outside of Atlanta, on the Alabama border, and then Fargo, North Dakota. So these are all become apparent about why they're important. A lot of text, I know, but are graphic designers in the audience? Anybody? Designers? Okay, sure. So these are 2 quotes by some good friends. Olga Viso is the head of the Walker Art Center, and she and Todd have written and researched the changing role of museums. And yes, I know museums. We're a contemporary art space. We're a gallery. We have the Nyland collection, not the permanent collection. These are semantics in one way or another. But the idea is how my work is really looking at how museums and gallery spaces and art spaces and creative spaces are changing. And they're not these monolith institutions, but in fact respond best when we allow artists to help us take the lead. And so the model of the Art Museum has never been more challenged and in more need of creative reimagination. And that is the crux of my work, my PhD, and my passion in life. Their missions should include artists that have been invited inside the museum to help shape programs, interpret their own work, and to serve as provocateurs to the status quo. So this is the role that I hope to see you and other creatives taking charge with me, knowing that you're welcome, you're here, that we want to hear what you have to say, how you can be a provocateur. You can be a nice provocateur if you want, or not so nice provocateur, open to that too. But within that provocative place that we want to embody with our creativity, there are also some very important dynamic changes that are happening in institutions. Financial sustainability is ever more important. Connecting with community, absolutely essential. It's no longer putting work up on the wall and walking away. And the role of art museums or contemporary art practices within society as a whole. So these are the three of the main ideas that I also adhere to, and they are the three main directions and aims, general aims, that I'll employ over the next 4 years. So there is an operational element to my work. There will be a financial element to my work, and we'll have a creative, curatorial thrust, artistic thrust to my work. Without those three parts to the I want to say chair, to the stool, you can't have one. We can't not have one of those three parts to the stool. The others will fall, obviously. So that being said, I propose, and again, a lot of text, but I propose through slow curation, community context and collaboration are the key in understanding what slow curating is. So it's a riff off of the slow foods movement. And I know there are all these problematics, I'm ready for them all, but the connection with the slow foods movement is, like the slow foods movement, slow curating is about working locally, thinking internationally, working with local stakeholders, using local materials. Okay, in our case, working locally with artists, connecting with community, not using artificial contaminants. So the slow curating is really about using innovative approaches and new methods, and I could talk about new methods and approaches from curatorial practice to educational and pedagogical examples to new marketing techniques. And even if we have time and you're really bored, we could talk about new techniques and raising money. But it's about working closely with artists, colleagues, and communities to exchange and create new work, unexpected outcomes where the expert is challenged. And I really love this as a curator. You know, curators love to love themselves. You know, curators tend to want to be the center of attention. And, you know, there's been this real interesting tension between artists and curators, and there's also a really amazing relationship. But it's not important, really, it's that who's in charge or who decides. That idea of the ivory tower or the curator in the white room, in the big white room, is really changing, and it's no longer the way that curators really function. Some do. But I'm really interested in how that expertise might be challenged, and I'll give you a couple of examples. And we think globally but act locally. I know it's a cliche, but it's about talking about what's urgent. So, for example, the last couple of years, there have been a lot of political shows that have happened here at the Model. Fascinating. I'm really interested in conflict, post-conflict as well, as you'll see. But no one has taken up the issue that 50 feet away is a huge parking lot full of travelers, for example. Not that we're going to do a show on travelers next week, but the point is responding and thinking about what's the local context. And if you're going to talk about politics, you got to talk about local politics as well as national, international politics as well. I think one has a responsibility. I think I do. So here's some of the boring stuff, but I just thought in case there are any board members or people who, you know, may be interested in this. And it's really important to me, and it actually will be the focus for the first kind of 6 months, which is to look at the organization, the artistic, and the strategic. So we're going to do a 30-day health check, that's due tomorrow, 60-day report on the transition plan, 100-day report about change strategy, and a full implementation of an organizational transition. So you might say, what does this have to do? Well, if you don't have your house in order, if you don't have a way to set up and pay your bills, if you haven't paid that heat bill in quite a while, not that we have, but if you don't have that infrastructure, it's really hard to go out there and be creative. It's really hard to think strategically. And so we're going to get our house in order. And it's there. You know, we have good people here. We just need to organize ourselves. And I feel like as a leader, I need to support that. So this is what a strategic looks like, a transition plan, a 3-year strategic plan, financial feasibility, audience engagement, and model sites. So this is all a little bit more of the operational side. If you're interested, I could talk for an hour about it. Organizationally, we're going to build a permeable organization together that looks at collaborative team working. So instead of having me as the curator and Emer as the curator, and every once in a while we may call Marie Louise, we're going to have a curatorial team that looks at issues, looks at proposals, looks at what's happening in the world, looks at our ideas and individual curatorial practices. It'll include, you know, Melissa, who's currently curatorial assistant. It may include Aaron, who's currently one of our 130s, who's been doing marketing, but has real opinions, right, about what we should do.
Sure.
Yeah. As he told me last week. Anyway. But it also looks at admin, human resources, policies and procedures, etc., etc. Now, here's the fun part. And you know, it's really funny because I keep thinking, oh, I want to get to the fun part. I want to go talk to artists. I want to go do studio visits. I want to plan exhibitions. But you have to do the other stuff as well. Otherwise, we can't leverage what we do amazingly well. We can't have an amazing show like Marguerite's curated, which is currently upstairs, mind-blowingly good. If we don't have the infrastructure to get the marketing and get the word out, if we don't have schools coming through, if we don't have, you know, is it art if nobody sees it? So, but what kind of art will we look at? We're going to look at what's urgent. We're going to work collaboratively with artists. Arts and artists come first, national and international positioning. That doesn't say that we only work with artists who have a national or international profile, but we are going to be an international and national organization. We are going to say something with our shows. We'll have multiple disciplines and approaches. So I wanted to just give you a couple of examples of my work, and then we'll open it up and you can ask me any question. Mario Louis said, I'll tell you the questions before I ask them. You want to read them? I'm better on my feet. So these are my curatorial. That's a project I did on Andy Warhol. I'll talk about that. Going way back. The top one is a work that I did, a project that I did with Alice Maher, who's just on the road in Mayo. And it was a show called Portraits. And we did a small little, my first Irish book. I'm really dedicated to catalogs. In Portadown, I was there for 8 years, and we published 26 books. Artist books, all artist books. One children's, but it was still in our book. Anyway, for children. But Alice Maher, this is her portrait series. It's very small, not easy to read, but you know the series probably. What's great about this work is that this was 2003. I had started in March. 5 years later, I walk into High Street in Portadown. I'm getting a top or a dress or I don't know, buying something. And the person says, oh, you're from Millennium Court. I saw that Alice Maher show. Now, these was dead things. You remember this piece? There was a bunch of dead things. There was one necklace with like cow or lamb hearts, right? So this was not incredibly popular show. People were like, what the hell is that? Nobody went, oh my gosh, I'm totally amazed. Well, not a lot of people. But some did, and of course Alice is amazing, right? And it also helped us put us nationally on the map. But anyway, so I'm in there 5 years later, and the woman says, I saw that show. I know what it's about. I said, really? What do you think it was about? And she said, she's a vegetarian. And she was making a statement. And I said, no idea if she's a vegetarian or not. But maybe. And maybe that is the way to read it. Whatever way, it doesn't really matter, because this woman 5 years later was talking about an exhibition and a body of work by an Irish artist who had come to Portadown and never would have come, per se, without the center. So, you know, it changed her dramatically. I don't know. Probably didn't change her life. Maybe. She's a vegetarian effort. I don't know. But the point isn't that. The point is getting people to talk and dialogue and discuss what is art. Well, point here. The next one is Shane Cullen's The Agreement, another artist from Mayo. It was just up last week. Shane Cullen's The Agreement is 57 panels of the Good Friday Agreement. Beautiful, sublime show, had traveled all around the UK and Ireland and even the United States. And Portadown, as you probably know, is the only place that voted in its majority against the agreement. And this kind of landed in my plate at the beginning. And of course, they thought, as an American, I don't have any political bone in my body. And maybe I don't, I think I do, but so we went ahead and did this show, and the interesting debate about it was they didn't, you know, my board was also made up of all political parties and all of the unofficial political parties, meaning the Orange Order and Gavahi Road. but also counselors from the local authority. And we literally had a debate and discussion about, is this art? Is it not art? Well, Megan said it's art. Well, I don't think it's art. I think it's propaganda. I mean, at a board meeting, fantastic. And again, not that you necessarily want to discuss a board meeting, but this was a really important step for a board who had not necessarily been interested or had a lot of art discussions before. Anyway, they voted in favor to have it. I had a risk assessment. I had plans for bombs. I had a plan for everything. And nothing happened. I don't know if I was more disappointed that nothing happened or if Paisley didn't show up. I mean, he showed up other times, right? So, God rest his soul. This is another piece a couple of years later by Robert Jarvis. He asked, it's a sound piece, he's a composer of digital media. He we commissioned him. We were fairly successful in getting money to do new work, which is my focus and my interest, is working with artists around new work. And this one was a recording of rural sounds around Loch Ness and the encroachment of urbanization around that. And then we held it in a darkened space in the gallery space. It went on to win the British Composer of the Year award in 2006. This is my master's thesis. Every year, you know, I don't have to explain to you guys. It's really interesting how much I have to go into explaining this in America. So there's this thing called the Orange Order. So we did this show on the Orange Order. I've been really interested in how visual culture had been manifested. The green identity had already been done by many, many scholars, but very few had done anything on the orange culture. And in Portadown, as you know, it's known as the birthplace of Orangism. It's where local Orange Lodge #1 is located. And I thought instead of actually shunning that history, we're going to embrace it. And every year, the Orange celebrations are in a different town. And this year, 2005, they were going to be located in Portadown. I also had at least 3 outwardly open members of the Orange Order, and probably about another 5 unofficially in another order, either orange or black on my board. So what we did was we had an exhibition that unpacked what was orange culture by contemporary artists, and then we also worked with the local Orange Lodge on artworks and artifacts. And it was the first time, so just to go back to Shane's work, this is the beginning of the peace process, more or less. It was when we invited all the political parties to come to Portadown to discuss their platform for culture, which most of them have. Now they have them. But this one, it was the first time the Orange Order had come out publicly and sat on panels and had a public discussion about what the Orange Order was, its culture, its legacy. And the reason I did this is not because I'm a huge Orange Order fan or not a fan. The reason I did it is because 40,000 people or more a year in that small province participate in Orange Order celebrations, and I don't think you can negate what 40,000 people think is culture. And it has now become kind of a forerunner for how to talk about really difficult issues through art, and just opening up space. So, sorry, this is this is also to show, you know, I had this director once in Wisconsin, I won't say, well, okay, who cares, I'll let her here. She was Ruth Kohler from the Michael Kohler Art Center. Fantastic woman, amazing center, absolutely mind-blowing. And we were talking, and she said, "Do you ever do any straight shows?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about, straight shows." But you'll see what I mean when I talk about some of these. So here's one example of my straight show, I guess. I do straight shows. I like work. I like painting. I like drawing. I'm straight. I don't know, I just think it was really weird, you know, that was like, you do straight shows? Like the other ones were, you know, queer. I'll take that on. But what's important, and I think about this, and when I was interviewing, actually, Allison Pickleton asked me, she said, I showed some of the artists that I'm interested in, and she said, you know, some of these don't employ a social engaged practice. Yeah, that's okay. And that's okay, because I do. Because I employ a social engaged practice. So, anyway, so it's an example of a straight show. Here's another example of collaboration. I worked with 2 curators who were kind of experts in their field with electronic art. This was in collaboration with the International Symposium for Electronic Art in Belfast. Fantastic. It was the first one of my first experiments using iPod tours. Really one of the first, well, first in Ireland that I know to use iPod tours. Failed miserably. People didn't want to put the earphones in their ears after somebody else had had them. Who knew? So, but it was also the first time, 2008 really, and leading into this, that we began to use Facebook. So I think it was us, and maybe the Glucksman, and someone else. You know, very few people in Ireland were using Facebook at the time. So it seems weird now, doesn't it? This is a project by Frank Gehry that we did in 2006. And the reason I show it is because I think that part of my curatorial practice is to think big, is to not worry if it can't happen. So we did this exhibition with Frank Gehry. I called the Weissman where I used to work, remember, as a docent and a low-paid intern and low-paid lackey. I said, "Hi, it's my Arnie. Do you remember me?" And they're like, "Oh, heck yeah, we remember you." I'm like, "Oh, we wanna, we were thinking," they were having this anniversary exhibition of his work and his museums, which is now most famous for, right, the Bill Bob. But we added, so we took that show and we just said we're going to do it, we'll find the money somehow, and we did. We found a lot of money, a lot of support, and we brought over the models, we looked at his furniture, we looked at his sculpture, and we looked at his projects, his other projects like Maidens House. So we had a project space, we had the models, we had the spaces. This is a campaign that where we did billboards all around Ireland, and I remember I just had a baby and came with my little, whatever, car seat and put him down and said, "I don't like this, I like this, I don't like this. What do you really think, Megan?" And they said, "Why are you doing billboards in Cork? No one will come from Cork to Portadown." And I said, "Well, maybe they'll come," and they did, they came. But it wasn't only important to get people there, it was to get people thinking differently about Portadown. That was the reason to do that. So it says, "Come and see the Guggenheim in Portadown." So that's fantastic, right? I mean, because I know what everybody thinks about Portadown. And this is, by chance, two of the Guggenheims. This is Lord Castle Stewart. It's so fascinating. They saw the billboard and they're like, what's happening here? So they called me up, and they actually live in Castle Stewart. And his dad, who had the maid and the lord, married the Guggenheim with the money. It's like a bad movie. But it's a wonderful, strange story, sitting next to him saying, "So when did you sit in the House of Lords?" That was a bad question. He hasn't done that. This is another sound piece on the installation piece that we did with Glenn Stevenson, recorded sounds. I'll go quicker. This is Andre Stitt, known as mainly performance arts, although now he has completely turned, with this work, we commissioned a new body of work with him. It turned him back to his original practice, which is painting. And this was an amazing project that looked at Craigavon. Craigavon's the middle town, right, between Portadown and Lurgan. And it was kind of one of those little McKean type of towns, right, where you just build it and they will come and it's amazing utopia. Well, as you know, probably, it became Little Beirut instead, after Goodyear closed and the trouble started manifesting more. There were roundabouts to nowhere. There were houses that were built really quickly and then demolished. And now, in that time, 2009, it was actually becoming resurfacing as a luxury or kind of a yuppification of, which is funny in a way, of Craigavon. So we asked Andre, I met with Andre. Funny story just on the side, which I'm embracing, is that he said, "Oh, yeah, I'm really glad to meet you. Declan said really great things about you, Declan Manado." Love him. He said, "Once you get past your abrasiveness and American abrasiveness, you're really cool and funny." And I was like, "What?" Thanks. I'm not that abrasive. I'm working on that. But he was fantastic, right? And this is how an artist and a curator, a producer, I think I'm a producer in a way too, we work together. So I had this idea, I really wanted an artist to respond to A, right? And I'll go back to this. We have this idea. Oh, I really want you to respond to craft. No, I'm not really interested in that. Well, let's just drive around. No, I'm not really interested in that. But just look at that over there. Look at this, you know, and he began to see what we were seeing all the time, these strange, you know, literally you could drive around a roundabout and there would be a road off and it would go into a field, you know, this kind of unfinished business. So, I mean, he took it in a totally, in his own direction and really had made these incredible layered paintings, but yeah, so it was really wonderful working with him. And again, we created a book. Another street. I'm a little joking a little bit here, but because these were some of the exhibitions that we did, some of the most radical work around radical pedagogy. In terms of, we were one of the only organizations, I think Emma maybe did it a little bit in the National Museum, but we were one of the first organizations to implement VTS, or Visual Thinking Strategies, which is an approach to looking at art. So it asks 3 questions. What do you see here? What more can you find? No, sorry, what do you see here? What makes you say that? And what else can we find? And this process was designed by Philip Yenaway, who was the head of education at MoMA, and Abigail Houston, who is a Harvard professor in education. And it was just really amazing. We were able to kind of take risks and do new things with all different kinds of. So this is one of my pieces. This is the Guerrilla Girls All Ireland Tour. It was a commission. So I went to curate, I pitched to curate the Venice Biennale in 2008, I think it was when Susan Williams got it, and didn't get it. But I had done so much research, including I had, you know, gone and seen the shows earlier and saw work, and I came across the Guerrilla Girls. Put it aside, as you do, curators put things in your back pocket. And so I didn't get that, so I thought, okay, what can I do? And I had lots of ideas from that research still, like Emily Jessier and others. So I called up, or emailed the Guerrilla Girls and said, hi, just like I did with Craig Gary. Hi, want to come to Ireland? Got this great idea. Irish art, supposedly modernism, right? Women brought modernism to Ireland, right? But it doesn't seem like that to me. It doesn't seem like sexism is completely gone. Maybe it has something to do with, you know, imperialism, the British state, the Troubles, the Catholic Church. I mean, you know, many ranges. Immediately they said, hell yes, I want to come. We want to come to Ireland. So they came, and I reached out to University of Ulster, Kirsten May in Belfast, to Cork, the Glucksman Gallery, Dublin, Declan, and at the NCAD, and Trinity, and UC. I just reached out to everybody, and everybody said, yes, we want to do this, and Kilkenny. And so what ended up happening was that the Guerrilla Girls came, they did a bunch of gigs, they did a ton of research, and we also had a little team here that did a bunch of research, and so we were really looking at too, how do you do visual art research? How, you know, is it just about gender, or is it about other things as well? So we really looked at, we aimed to create a lens through which power and powerless were identified, gender was examined, and issues about women in contemporary Irish society could be discussed. And this is still very relevant, I think. So we also then, they created 2 new bodies of work, which you can see. I'm not a feminist, but if I was, this is what I complain about. That's what I heard all the time. I'm not a feminist. But if I was, let me tell you what I really pissed off about. And then the other one, which is Let's Toast Irish Art Lads. And I know that there was a contingent from Sligo that came to Portadown in one of their gigs, right? Anybody go to that one? Yeah. So, interestingly, I had this correspondence back and forth with Noel Kelly from BAI, and he said, no, sexism. There's too many women in powerful positions in Irish art for them to really be sexist. I was like, dude, seriously? So I sent him these, and he said, but sure, you can move statistics any way you want. I'm like, no, that's kind of the point of statistics, is that they're numbers. But anyway, it's true. So I think there's more discussion on that. This is Paul Seawright's new work. We commissioned the first work on a Northern Irish theme in 15 years, and by the way, he'll be showing his new body work here in a couple of months. This is a project I did with Fiona Barber, which toured to Wolverhampton and Manchester, looking at artist practice within the 10 years after the Good Friday Agreement. Connor McGrady, who's currently at the Burren. Peter Duffy's chocolate AK-47, super fun work. Philip made beer in my hog. So really interesting. So then we traveled to America, and we are in the LaGrange Art Museum, which is a building from 1897, originally built as a county jail in the Deep South. 7 hangings took place in this jail in the 1800s, early 1900s, 5 or 6 of which were African American. Right over here, well, just a block away, is this town square, which regularly had Tea Party rallies while I was there. It was fascinating stuff. So one of the things that we did again was, it has a permanent collection. It was the first time I really got to kind of get my hands on quickly a permanent collection, and we looked at elements of architecture in 3 areas, which also have overlaps with artistic practice, of course, form follows function, vision and process, and place and vernacular. And as part of that, we riffed off of Moma's Shape Lab and had a wall that looked at that. I'll go a little faster. So, project with it's called an Active Life Center. It's not a senior center, by the way. We work with the Active Life Center in LaGrange and 50 students. I can talk about that. We also did a project called Dali, Warhol, Picasso, and Lady Gaga, called Personality. It's fantastic. This is Mark Clare, who will be up next in February, March. This is a project he did. I didn't know Mark in Ireland. He ended up in Georgia for some reason, and he said, I've got this idea. I want to do this house. Based on the housing crisis, obviously, and the regional vernacular shotgun. Fantastic. I can go back to that if you want. But this is the temporary this is the sculpture park, sculpture space. Right beyond that flag is a man on a bronze statue of Lafayette entering on this horse. Such an interesting dynamic for public art, and we had lots of discussions about housing, public art, etc. This is a project that I did, the first one I did in Fargo, called You Like This, a Democratic Approach to the Museum, where we went on, the collection was put online, people voted, we had the top 20 people, or top 100 brought down, or 150, a small group of community curators. As a team, we worked collectively to get it down and rank them to the top 100. People could still vote, and there was a timeline. And as you can see, they gave us instructions on how to hang the show. Number 1 request was, don't make it look like another Plains Art Museum show, like boring. So, best argument for curation I've ever seen, but looked really not great. But anyway, fun. And this is where we kind of got into trouble. And this show is one of the best examples of my curatorial practice, because you had to give up authorship and expertise, and people were telling me to do all kinds of crazy things, and well, the things that really went against all my curatorial aesthetic. And we did it because that's what the intention was. And anyway, we had this blogger called Real Clear Arts, from Real Clear Arts in New York, found out about the show, and she wrote, "This is a denigration to the curatorial profession. It's horrible." And I was like, right on! So great! And I was like, yes, welcome to the dialogue and curatorial discussion for the past 20 years. But it was really exciting to challenge myself and challenge my curatorial practice. The staff was challenged. I mean, I literally had to take the tape measure out of the hanger's hand and say, no, not 57 inches off the floor, right? Is everything same height? Just put it anywhere. Oh, he's like, what? This is crazy. It's just crazy. Anyway, so this is the other failure that ended up being quite good. So I go to Fargo after LaGrange. An old colleague from the Weissman had encouraged me to come and do whatever I wanted to do and help raise money and open up this new extension. But so I said, okay, I got it. I want artists to respond to the context. And I'm saying this kind of facetiously, but I really did think this. And I'm going to ask artists to give me their ideas or how they want to respond to this incredible, amazing annual flooding. Like it happens every year, right? And more sandbanks come in than it could actually overtake the pyramids at Giza, right? That many every year. And it's like this call of duty in Fargo, North Dakota. And you have to kind of understand, Fargo, North Dakota is like the West. It was like no man's, you are just pull up your bootstraps and just get on with it, right? So they spend 47,000 hours, building school. It's like a community building thing. It's strange, right? Like community building. And so anyway, I had all these artists lined up. It was going to be fascinating. We had raised the money. And what happened? Remember? Flooded. Didn't flood. I was like, oh, praying for flooding, but you're not, because it's... we had to think a little bit differently. And that's what's fascinating to me about open-ended processes as a curator. You have to pivot and shift and move and respond, and it's fascinating and amazing. And I don't profess to be an artist. I have a practice, but I'm not an artist, and so I love the way that artists think and rethink and recontextualize. So anyway, so we asked artists to respond to that there was no flood, and what does that mean? Well, it's interesting because if you think about it, and those of you who know about post-conflict, there is this residual psychological effects. So like people weren't as nervous again in the spring. People will lose their houses. You have to decide whether or not you're going to have flood insurance. You need to know what you're going to, it's a scary thing. Flooding can happen so quickly it'll overtake your house, right? So we asked people to respond to the diversion that was being proposed. We, Seed February, asked people to take their seed bags and about regrowth, performative piece on your Stanislav. Rebecca Cranky worked with high school kids to, is it hot in here? Is it just me? Flood stories. Jeff Knight hand-carved 250 wishbones to hand out as thank yous to the flood workers. So as objects, they're beautiful, you don't want to break them, but you also want to wish for something for the future. So you want to break them, but you don't really want to break them. They're artwork. Really cool. And then we went on a huge propaganda. I also co-taught with Michael Strand this project called Engage You at NDSU, North Dakota State University. And we wanted to go on this propaganda campaign to say, well, what would you do now that we don't have to spend 43,000 man-hours? What will you do? How will you give back to your community? Part was a big kind of community oriented. This is another project that really has changed a lot for me called the Misfit Cup Liberation Project, which at first, this was, again, done with Engage You, but Michael Strand is this amazing ceramist, totally, like, I think ceramist of the year or something in America. But he did this project with 100 little houses, and he would give away 100 of his cups if you brought in a cup that was a misfit. And what we thought was going to be a project in bad design, right? Those cups with, have like flamingos on them, whatever. Bad design became an exchange, a cathartic exchange for people. So people would write about, their memories. And one person wrote about how this was the last cup that her grandmother's set, she had passed away. It was the only set cup left, and she wanted it to go somewhere safe. Someone else, an ex-con, brought his mug that he had used for 3 years inside and for 2 years outside, and it was time for him to give up his mug. So they became these kind of amazing spaces. And this, by the way, is in the foyer. You guys call it foyer, right? It's not lobby of the Plains Art Museum. So not an official gallery space. Because, of course, everything was already booked up when I got there. I said, what else can I do? So that was really amazing project. This is inside the gallery spaces. Luis Jimenez, one of the most well-known Latino artists from America. This was his first public art piece called Sodbuster. This was put out in public in Fargo, and after about 10 or 15 years, it was taken off out of public because it was dilapidated. It's fiberglass, one of the first times fiberglass had been made. Seriously, the first 10 questions I got when I got to Fargo, on the radio, TV, public, people stopping me in the supermarket, where is Sodbuster? What have you done? You want it back? I want it back now. And so we couldn't put it out because it was like Jimenez, and he's like super famous now, and it was dilapidated, and we had to fix it, and then we tried to fix it 5 years ago, but then he died in this horrible accident. It's like, seriously, a movie. We don't need to go to movies, we are movies. He died in an accident. He was the one that did that blue Mustang outside of Denver Airport. When he was installing that, he was actually killed. So we couldn't do it, but so we aimed to facilitate a new way of thinking about public art and a space for that. So we created in the gallery space, we did this outline, and you could write with pencil, because I had quite a strict registrar. And you could write your thoughts about Sodbuster. You could vote on a map where you wanted it to be, and then riffing off of the Van Abbe, one of their shows, we brought up all the old paraphernalia, correspondence, whatever we could find from the archive, to again show the public what this was about. So again, upending what would normally be behind closed doors. I'll go faster. So Andy Warhol, this was a really fun project. My boss said, "Why don't you do Blockbuster?" It's like when I know what the public wants. I want a Blockbuster. Blah, blah, blah. He always goes, "Oh, no." I said, "No, I don't want to do a Blockbuster. That's so 80s. I said, okay. I'll do this if I can do it like an alternative Blockbuster." So what we did, I knew these collectors in LaGrange, and maybe get them here. They love to come here, everybody wants to come there. And they had the mid-series and then Warhol's last series, which is the Cowboy and Indian series. And from the very beginning, I had envisioned a show that wasn't just about me putting another name on my CV, but actually about a collaboration. And so for over a year, I courted designers. Well, I talked to them, right? We just hang out and had coffee. What do you think about this idea? So Sundog is this amazing marketing company in Fargo, and I pitched to them a $15,000 sponsorship, but not only would they get their brand, blah, 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 but we wanted them to become co-curators with us and do the installation and the exhibition design. And what came out of it was an amazing experience of collaboration. And we had this factory section, and it was so cool. We embodied the spirit, we attempted to embody the spirit of Andy Warhol, and we have worked to create an engaging design that embraces ideas, embodies in his process collaboration, creativity, innovation, humor, so that surprise, and very cheeky behavior. Which they wanted me to change because we said nobody would understand cheeky. But attempted to bring Andy's Warhol's ideas to life by commissioning 3 artists to do new work in response. And this is the factory. And we had kids' art alongside Warhol's art. Which, maybe I'm being a little facetious here, but this is kind of breaking a lot of museum rules. And when small museums are attempting to become big museums and establish their positioning, I think we have to really begin to think outside of the box. I'll just keep going. This is my last project, Lust for Leisure, which is so that's it. You could ask me about upcoming projects. I am hot. So that's it.
Thanks very much, Megan, for that great talk and bringing us through a lot of your curatorial projects that you've done over the years. What we'll do is we'll open up some questions to the floor. But I suppose what I want to ask about a bit more as well is about this idea of slow curation and looking at these projects and that idea of slow curation, and you talk about you as a curator being socially engaged, not necessarily the artists, which actually creates more of a diversity, I think, in terms of who you work with or can work with in social contexts. But do you believe that this kind of practice can actually change the social fabric of Sligo in the Northwest art engagement?
So if anybody has to go, I think that's a tough question. Okay, Brownie, we were just talking about how artists have worked even within the context of the Troubles and have tried to and attempted to respond to that context. you know, some successfully, some not so successfully. And in the end, you know, I know there's been even discussion about can socially engaged art do anything? Like, why do that kind of art? So there's two answers really, I think, to that question. One is which I don't think it really matters if we. I mean, I think art changes people, and I think people change the world. That's what I really think. Do I think that an artist can have that intentionality in their work and with their practice? Yes. And do I think that they don't have to? Yes. I think that's fine. Artists, in my opinion, artists should do what they want to do, make the work that they want to make, and it's my job to facilitate that, produce that with them in collaboration and dialogue, discussions, debate, and mediate that with them for the public. That's how I've always felt, even before I could articulate my practice. So I think artists are, I think it's up to an individual artist to want to do it. I particularly find it really important. But I also come from a little bit of, you know, my background is political activism, community activism, you know, art, museums, and, well, I don't know, craziness, I suppose a little bit, but, you know, Midwestern. So it's always been an interest for me. So that's one side of it. The other side of the coin is that, yeah, I actually do think we can have some impact. Not on necessarily the course of events, but actually about providing a space for dialogue and debate, right? So, did I think that my work or the work of artists changed the way that people thought about Portadown? Maybe, maybe not, maybe. But I think it's more important that we, I mean, otherwise why do anything, right? So, I think that I think it did provide a space for dialogue and discussion, and it has been some of the works that, you know, shows have been noted as important milestones in how art can be a way to open up dialogue and discussion. But it wasn't a major shift in the political landscape of the Troubles or the peace process, right? Will we put it down? But it wasn't not part of it. I mean, Portadown is essential to understanding what happened in the North, right? What's happening in the small town in LaGrange, Georgia, is a microcosm of what's happening in the United States. I mean, still segregated by a train track. Housing is still very much, it's still a class question as much as it is a race question, and you know, it wasn't fully desegregated until like the 1980s. You know, I mean, it's deep. When you begin to look locally, I think you can find some really interesting things to do. So, I know, that's a hard question. So yes, but no.
Okay. In terms of, you know, what happens in the museum and the gallery, and also off-site, I know, you know, off-site and reaching out as well is very important in terms of practice. The model was closed for a period of time, and especially during that period of time, you know, off-site projects and even having the satellite space here in town was really important. And vital, I think, for, you know, the continuation and that conversation in terms of art and projects to pop up and occur, but also to have actually a gallery presence in the town. How important do you think that is now, or do you think it's equally important or not, to have off-site projects?
I think it's absolutely imperative to have off-site projects, and not so much that there are off-site projects, but that we work collaboratively with others on their projects and off-site projects and additional projects. And, you know, I don't like to see the organization that I run or I'm part of be separate. Our shouldn't ourselves alone, you know, up here on the hill. That's not interesting for me anyway. It's about becoming part and parcel of the fabric of Sligo. And so part of this social practice is that you don't just do projects, right? Go, oh, this is my project, I'm doing this, it's so socially engaged. Come along to it. It's actually like, you know, I've been working with you on that project, this is kind of cool, why don't we collaborate together, hey, I'm doing this project. You have to have a reciprocal relationship with people, collaborators, artists, community activists. You're part of a community. You know, I used to laugh and say to artists, you know, curators are people too. I swear, we are. We're just like you, we live in the world, and when I talk to people like my husband Gary, who's a plasterer, you know, artists we are part of the world. We're not the separate thing. Creative people are not separate. We just see things a little differently. So I think it's really important that we embrace the fabric of our communities and having off-site projects will do that, but also participating in other also do that. So I know there are offsite projects and, you know, whatever Sligo IT is doing, or whatever the hospital is doing, or whatever Blue Rainbow is doing. We want to support that. It's about our ecosystem, right?
And then in terms of the model itself and, you know, the gallery spaces and other spaces in the model, what would that look like in the future? Do you think you will start to activate other spaces more in the gallery?
Yeah, we were going to talk about this, right? So one of the things so I've done this 30-day health check and we've looked at all kinds of things, and one of the most glaring things is that when you walk in the door, or one of the doors, the front door, some door, it's dead. There's no extra. We have now started this cool, you know, Studio Plus thing happening in this small room. But like, wouldn't it be cool to have big windows or into this room to see what's happening, or somehow activate that space? And so I've actually been talking to a group of artists to respond to the building in general next year. And I just said, tell me what it will take, but what would you do? You had the whole building, the roof, the land, the front, that's horrible. Yeah. Like, do something. What would you do? What would it look like? And to that end, you know, I have always put my money where my mouth is. So, not somebody else's. But anyway, I will find it. I will find it. So for example, before I even got here, and when we finished, when I got here, we put a bid in with Craig Abbott and 8 other countries and 12 other organizations, or something like that, for a 640,000 euro grant, right, to facilitate these kinds of projects over the next 4 years. And we wrote a big grant for the Arts Council. And said, we're ready, we're back, we want more money. Please get some more money. Thank goodness, we're getting more money this year. Yeah, and so we are going to also try and establish our financial stability, a matrix of financial income that is not only sustainable but grows. So,
Can I actually just, because a few weeks ago, I'm a curatorial assistant here, so I have the pleasure every day I get to kind of, you know, take care of the collection as well, and I brought Megan in to see the collection, so I just wanted to kind of, she's had a few weeks to think about it, maybe you can share maybe 1 or 2, or maybe how many you like, and what are your plans with this collection for the future here in the model.
okay, I totally asked her to say that.
Yes,
thank you so much for asking me that question. Yeah. Well, it was cool. So Melissa was there, and she's like, do you want to see the collection? I'm like, yeah, I got about 2 seconds, let's go. So, you know, hours later, it's like a candy shop for curators. You know, you walk in and it's amazing. And for somebody who really started getting into Irish art about 10 years ago, I was the curator I was at the Met, and my friend runs the Irish Art Center in New York. It's a cool little Irish Art Center that has done amazing things. They're just rebuilding a new one. But she said, oh, come and curate. I'm like, I don't know anything about Irish art. And she was like, well, you know more about art than visual art than I do, Trinity undergrad. And I said, okay. So I bought a bunch of books, right? The books on Irish art. And I fell in love with Paul Henry and A.E. and Evie, and all these people became my friends. So I also read Circle religiously. And then when I came here, I had an idea of who I wanted to work with, and I had an amazing time. And then I came here, and I saw all my old friends again. So like, I was going to get Melissa to give me 1 or 2 that I could put in my, no, look. These are all my favorites right now. And these are just a handful. But I mean, we have 5 Paul Henrys. We have
50 Jack B. Yates.
Yeah.
We have John B. Yates. We have Anne Yates.
We have Yates, but we also have everybody else.
Yeah, we have Alice Lamar. We have
Kathy Prendergrass, Nano Lee, Jana Morney, Sean Sweeney. We have Ronnie Hughes, an early one. Wait till you see it, it's totally going out. An early Alice Maher.
Stella Solomon, we've lost her.
Oh, Stella Solomon. Yeah, I didn't know her. So one of the things that we are going to shift, and this was an easy decision. Sorry, it was a simple decision, but it wasn't easy. It never is. Is that we are going to extend the permanent collection, well, the Magdalen collection, we're calling our permanent collection. Instead of just 2 small galleries, it'll extend into the large gallery as well, and it'll be permanently on view. So we'll rehang the Magdalen collection beginning in January, and we'll use it as a foundation for school curriculums, reaching out to new tourists and our local community to really cherish and become more aware of this gem that's in our community. I mean, I mean, those of you who know it, it's amazing, right?
Yay!
It's amazing, right? And I mean, and so there is this kind of give and take with contemporary, and so I asked Val from the Arts Council, I'm like, so is it true I'm American and racist. Is it true you only support dead artists? I mean, not dead artists, and living artists? And he said, no. What makes you what? I said, because this is what we want to do. So it's not exactly true. These are all kind of truisms in the general. They're kind of true, they're kind of not true. So we will begin to leverage the permanent Nyland collection in new ways, to look at museology, new ways of curating. We're going to ask artists to respond to it. We're going to be doing new pedagogy around it. We're going to be inviting the schools back in to take ownership, community groups to take ownership. And we're going to invite the public back in to really honor and cherish this local asset. I mean, who wouldn't? It's kind of a no-brainer in a way. It's not spectacularly visionary in any way. It's like good collection, put it out.
So there, yeah, John.
Just as somebody who's involved in actually setting up this place, Dr. Lucky here, and we've obviously great enthusiasm for obviously the visual art world. But those of us who did set it up saw it as an art centre, and saw it more than, even though centrally it was the visual arts, we saw it as much more than an art gallery. What are your feelings about the bigger picture?
I didn't tell them to ask that. Well, I have the notes here, but I've never thought only in a visual. So put it down. I mean, our Art Center is a multi-platform organization. The Walker is the Walker Art Center. On the same par as visual, performance, music, film, graphic, design, we call it. They're all on the same par, right? But it's over a period of the past 20, 25, maybe even 30 years that in some spaces, the visual has become predominant. And even in Portadown, it was a visual-driven art center, but we had verbal. We had some of the most amazing projects done by writers, including Paul Muldoon, and Rita Duffy, and Glenn Patterson, and Victor Sloan. So I commission new work from artists. That's what I do. I don't really care. If it's a cool idea, it's a cool idea, right? That's what we're going to do. We're going to, and we are, part of the organizational restructuring, is to restructure the pie, tweak it, so that the majority of the money doesn't always go to the visual arts. More money will go into commissioning new music with Tara. Significantly more money will be going into education. More money will be going into collections. And I'm hoping to grow that number, right? But it's about realigning the pie a little bit of what we have, our resources, and making sure that we are a multi-platform organization. And I say that because that's who I am, and that's how I commission. So I worked with DJ Spooky on his new work, his new commissioned work. I've worked with writers, worked with Mikdar Valley. We commissioned his project called Peacefire, which went to the Fringe Festival. It's a one-man show. I've done all kinds of things. So I'm up for that in film as well. But it's also where I believe the best arts organizations are going. So if you look at even the Tate, but if you look at the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis, if you look at where the new museum is going, if you look at these other places, they are going for the multi-platform. Because we don't just say, I'm only visual, that's all I care about. I never read, I never listen to music, I never dress myself because collecting clothing is design. People are multidisciplinary in their own lives, so why would we try to pull that apart as a space where we do creativity? Is that acceptable? Hopefully. But I will add this, that I can't do this alone, and we can't do it with staff. So that's another, I think, caveat, is that you want to see it happen, you need to come and talk to us. You need to tell us what you want. You need to say, hey, this is what I can do. These are the contacts I can bring. Because one of the things that I do is it's kind of commandments, but leverage collective assets. So if you know 2 people, who know 2 people, who know 4 people, who can help us get to Lane Kravitz, cool, let's do that, or whatever. If you know, so I'll expect you to come and say, Megan, Tara, Mary-Louise, got this great idea. And here's how I can make it happen. What will be slightly less appreciated is saying, you need more music. You got to show more films. Not that kind of film, this kind of film. You know, I really wish Megan and the model would get out of off the hill and come down to see us at Xbox. Invite me. Invite us. You know. I think it's that kind of reciprocal relationship we're open to ask for and give. So,
Hi, I'm in the third year of the Fine Art degree in Sligo IT, and I've noticed that we're getting a lot more invitations this semester from the model to come to things, and there's the Studio Plus project, and you know, exciting stuff, and we're being typically reached out to, which for me, I really appreciate that. But I'm also aware, and I have no idea of the political history of this, that our third and fourth year shows happen in North and South Leitrim.
yep.
And I wonder what you think about the fact that we don't have any of our end of year shows in Sligo model.
I think that should change.
Cool. Me too.
Where, when, and how? I don't know. We got to figure some of this out. One of the first questions Ronnie said, this is one thing you have to deal with. So I'm well aware that thank you for raising it, especially in public. Thanks for the acknowledgement. We are trying to work on getting the word out, but we're going to even work harder, and that's part of the infrastructure. We're coming up with a marketing and audience development plan, which isn't just bullshit, it's actually got actionable things, and we're going to invest in our people, and we're going to do
I
this.
think it's really exciting to think that we could do more work, and the kind of work you're talking about, outreach and socially aware and all of that, you know, because the more input for us as students, the more different directions become available to us. And
Right. You know, I'll also add too that, you know, I'll be honest with you, the specific time that the end of year graduate show is really sucks for us, organizationally in this family. You know, because it's kind of like not a great time for us, you know. So we will openly say this now. That's not a great time for us to do that, you know, or maybe not one of the major galas, maybe one of the different galas, or maybe it should be the major gala for a weekend instead of a week. I really feel like this is important to say because it's not always going to be like, yes, let's just change everything, make everybody happy. We're never going to make everybody happy, ever. But what we will do is honestly, openly, in a transparent way, with genuine interest, begin to engage in this discussion and try and find solutions. So, I mean, I kind of feel like, geez, if I'm hanging out, if I'm used to negotiating with the Orange Order, and on both sides, we can find a solution to the end of your shows, you know? Michael?
But if the model is to engage and nurture at that vital level, it must go back a few years because it has been just a little bit elitist in the last few years. I might just say that in 2003 I went back to college and I had my degree show here. It upped my game in the quality of work that I wanted to make because I found myself in an institute like this, albeit briefly. It just changed the ballpark entirely. And for Sligo and the model to nurture such a fine art department as it has, it must start that process of engagement.
I agree.
It must.
You better watch it. You better put on that board.
No problem.
Okay. No, exactly. And I think it's not just with artists too, but it's with, you know, musicians, it's with filmmakers, it's with, you know, early educationalists, it's with curators, you know. I mean, one example, and the model has been doing that, you know. I think maybe it's maybe time to come out again of the club. I would really like to draw a line in the sand and kind of just move forward. I mean, I'm willing to hear, sit and listen. Potentially, it would be much better instead of a coffee or a glass of wine at this point. But I will listen to what it was, you know, like before. But I'd really much rather say, how can I help them move forward?
Well, it's really heartening to hear the transparency about this, you know, in terms of putting yourself forward and the team as accessible. Because by its very namesake, the model sort of suggests you lead by example. And there are so many kind of art centres all over Ireland that have been constructed by the governments of the day and via the Arts Council to be self-sustaining in their own region or town or so on. But that sense of, as an arts centre, what an arts centre can be, that sense of then modelled by its title, suggests that it has this sort of leading edge.
Yeah.
So I think to return to that kind of symbiosis in the community, but also bring that forward to a kind of wider stage.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's really exciting. Even if you take that definition, which I've already been hit up like 6 times to change the name back to the island, by the way, but so this is a new model. This is one that some of the leading art centers in the world are embracing. Multiple platforms, divergent voices, community connections with community, and it's kind of like what education was in the 80s. Oh, all museums have education. No, this is real. This is something that isn't just also happening in the arts; it's happening in the world, right? So people want better connections. They want real connections. This is something that even business is also responding to, right? It's about social entrepreneurship and everything from Todd's Shoes to Apple and Disney and others are responding to what people want instead of just vast, big, bad consumerism. I'm not saying it's a magic revolution. I'm just saying that this is a response to what's happening in the world as well, I think. And it's responding to the way artists are making. Andy and I were having that conversation yesterday. Artists are responding in different ways. They are making work in a studio, but they're also part of the world in which we live. So I think this is the model. I think it's the future. That's what the whole PhD is, and better be a book, so hopefully I'm right. It'll be fun.
Good luck.
Thanks. Thanks for the tough question.
You had a slide there that said future projects, and you said I could talk about that.
Yeah.
Just very briefly, you obviously have some.
Sure. So the upcoming projects, there's music projects with Tara can talk about more about. We're commissioning new work. Marty Louise can talk about some of our educational projects. Emer, I gave the day off. She really needs more time off, so she's away. It's forced day off. No. But we are going to open up with Mark Clare, the guy who did the house. It's a project that's touring from the Crawford. So we're part of the commission process, and I wrote an essay for the catalog, and it'll come here, and he'll create a new piece of work specifically. We don't know what. You met him the other week, we don't know. We're also going to be part of a touring commissioning project with Paul Seawright. He just did a project in the States that I was a part of. Working for him, trying to find leads and producing the work with him, supporting him to produce the work, I should say. That opens up in the Irish Art Center in Paris. I can't say it in French, but anyway. So that's opening up this autumn, and we'll get it in April and May. There's also a book there. And these are very inexpensive shows, I have to say, even though they come from big touring projects. But because I can leverage the connections, we're getting them for fairly inexpensively. We're rehating the permanent collection in a new way. You're just going to be blown away when you see it. I'm really excited. You were asking what we're doing. I said, I don't know yet, but I have some ideas. Then after that, Emer is curating a really cool show called Psychic Lighthouse, based in responding to the Year of Yeats, not so obviously in terms of, this is Yeats, and this is what we're going to do. But actually about how artists are responding to the notions of psychic and place and lots of layers. So she's actually commissioning new contemporary artists to respond to these. I'm also commissioning at the same period of time artists to respond to Yeats's poem, The Lake of Innistrades, including local artist Clea Vandergren, who's co-curating with me, with also Maurice O'Connell, who's kind of one of the old stalwarts of Irish art. And this fascinating guy. He's going to build a house on the island. Corbin Walker is coming, and Michelle Horrigan, and Felicity Clear, and a few others will be fascinating. I just said, hey, come, respond, I don't know, tell me how much you need, whatever. But still, reasonable, we don't have to. Can you do that for a tenner? At the same time, as the permanent collection is being hung, the small gallery space will be utilizing plug-in like this notion of plug-in exhibitions, like the Van Abbey, where you plug in an idea, small show, and that small room will continue to spin, and be plugged in with different ideas. And then in the autumn, we're doing an amazing project. Marlene Wees is co-curating. She can talk about a little bit with Bart
Ludovic.
Okay,
So this is a project that's been going on in Sligo over the last 2 or 3 years, and at the core of it is drawing. It's a drawing project, but it interfaces with public and community. So I'm going to co-curate this project with another curator, and we're looking at drawing and how that manifests itself in those spaces, but then bringing it back into the gallery and looking at the influences of the artist as well. There's some seminal works that will be coming over from Europe as well, some really nice, interesting works. And also then, part of that will be an archive, which will look at the artist's practice in community and in public spaces, urban public spaces, over the last 10 years. So we'll be looking at that, and there'll be a major focus in terms of Sligo in that archive as well. And there'll also be a publication which will, I suppose, demarcate or at least underpin that 10 years of practice. So that's kind of how it's shaping up. So it'll be like archive, artist drawings in the gallery, possibly a permanent chalk drawing for the model, chalk drawing for the collection, and drawings in the gallery spaces. So that's kind of how it's shaping up at the moment. So he's been coming and going from Sligo over the last 2 or 3 years. So some of you have probably seen some of his chalk drawings down here in Riverside, Dooley Park, and just over there in Garavold around that area. So it's nice to bring it back up to the gallery to kind of look at it and to bring in the community as well. And we'll also be inviting the community as well to create an exhibition from the collection shortly after that, going into 2016, so that we continue that conversation and bring them back here. So we're kind of going out there, but it's really about kind of drawing them in here and engaging with the gallery and the collection.
And we'll have a major symposium with that, which will bring in artists and curators from kind of both Europe and America that look specifically at this type of curating. So Maria was like, yeah, I want to invite so-and-so and so-and-so and Paul and you. And I was like, oh, those are all my names. So, but it's part and parcel of what we're doing. You know, very much education is really definitely coming to the fore as far as the vision is concerned.
Just to say that more Louise, like say from the art culture point of view, our students are going to be included, like we've already sat down and discussed the fact that the students will be included in part of that. So there's an engagement for the students within that through part of their modules in college and stuff as well. So just, from our perspective to say that that's the first time in 10 years I think I reckon that we've actually been able to engage with each other in an honest and interesting way, So,
Cool.
yeah, so see? Yeah, just, so people kind of, say about degree shows and just to come back to that, to say about degree shows and things like that. There's lots of other models as well for engagement with the Arts Centre. So it's not just the degree show. There are lots of ways that our students can, and practice has changed a lot since our degree show left here. And we have very good partners in other places for our shows that we're very happy with. So, so the degree show is one thing to be discussed, but there's so many other kinds of engagement that we are, moving forward with now.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Fine.
Megan, how are you?
Hi, good. Great to see you.
Thanks, so please. I guess I just want to ask you, given that you've spent most of the last 5 or 6 years outside of Ireland now, what's been your take when you perspective from a distance and how the recession has really impacted on Irish artists? And do you think that they perhaps have become quieter or much less vocal or much less inclined to be anyway critical of the status quo establishment as an outcome of realising that when resources are slim, you don't criticise, but we are putting a bit of the parapet. And I guess I'm just curious to know if you can and will provide a space for artists to become more vocal and assertive and rightfully critical perhaps. I mean, do you see that?
Are you sure you know me? You know what's like, come on in, let's be critical. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if in the past 5, no, in my 90, and I kind of laughed a little bit because it was like, everybody in the room knows the criticism that the model has had over the past year. We've got to be open to the criticism. That's why we really like to draw that line. But
maybe
yeah.
talk about the bigger picture as well, just in terms of how funding gets allocated, who it gets allocated.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I guess.
I think it is very local as well, right? I think the political nature of supporting art and creativity is very much, you know me, very much about a local, a regional, and a national, and how that's interconnected, and even how we can break out of that a little bit more even to the international, right, as well. So it's a very local question. My perspective, my approach would be the same locally as it would be nationally, regionally, and nationally, which is to engage people in this passion, I'm kind of a soapbox. I'm kind of a politician, and I advocate for art and creativity, and artists and creativity. And I will try to convince you of my case, whoever you are. And I will not. One thing that I steadfastly refuse to do is to underestimate audiences, including politicians, including people who are not regular museum goers, including sports fanatics. I'm not going to underestimate that I can't convince them that creativity and art is a fantastic, amazing thing and should be part of their lives. So I think that while there's absolutely a need and almost a real need to be critical, it needs to be coupled with this idea that we can be critical and constructively bring people with us. I think that's imperative, and it's been imperative for me. If I had been like that and poured it down, shame never would have shown, right?
Well, you have to
if I had been like, we're showing art, Yeah. Instead, we had, what is art? What does it do? What does it say? What does it mean to be an artist today? And by not underestimating people, it's kind of coming at them not in a way that's dumbed down, but actually in a way that they can connect in some way. Like Gary, my husband's a plasterer, doesn't really get into art. So I had to say, well, the Venice Biennale is just like the World Cup. Right? Whoa, things changed. I was able to go. So, I'm going to be a little bit, no, I literally didn't say that. But, so I think it's really important that artists have space to be critical of their own practice, of others, of what we're doing. And I know that Visual, for example, is one of the best funded organizations in the country from their county council. It doesn't get as much money from us, being the Arts Council. Do I feel like getting into a tete-a-tete with Visual over what they get and we don't get, or I've never really worked that way. So I'd much rather kind of figure out how we can collectively work together. And there is an example, my experience has shown that we did this in the north of Ireland, around they need to do it again now, but when we lobbied our politicians to try and get parity for funding from London, the same that Wales and Scotland were getting, and England, whatever. So we lobbied, and this campaign was one of the politicians would say, most articulate, passionate, intelligent people we've ever met. And I was sitting there with David Trimble, David, sorry?
Irvine.
No, not David Irvine. He's from Portadown. David, he's on my board, I can see him. Anyway, he replaced Trimble in this mid-Ulster, and I was like, I see you. Because he was my guy, right, in Stormont. And so it is local, regional, and national in that respect. So you ask a tough question, and we could have lunch and coffee and dinner for the whole night talk about it. But yeah, I really want to create a space where people can have this discussion and dialogue. And if you think that we're doing something wrong, like I said, tell us. And I've said this to the staff, if I screw up, tell me. Don't go get pissed off about it and stay mad for a week. Tell me, we'll fix it. Bring it to a solution of some sort. And we'll move forward, Because I could have screwed up. It happens. But, I'm going to make a mistake. Like the other night, we had this great dinner. I forgot to invite Melissa. See, I did it in public. Damn. And it needs leadership. You know, as a political person, I think everything is a leadership question. So maybe it'll be you and Shane.
No, I just think that became very evident in the last couple of weeks with the whole McNulty debacle. And it just struck me how terribly quiet the visual arts sector was, as if nobody really wanted to put themselves out on a limb by being openly critical, although everybody was, terribly vocal about it on the quiet.
Right, right.
But really, how many artists did you see come forward to actually give an opinion on the whole scenario? I think Robert Ballard did.
Right. And Bal always does.
He does, yes.
You know Bal for years. But he's one of those people that always does. He takes leadership very, very seriously. And whether or not you agree that he's your leader or not, he's saying something.
But you'd like to hear other voices.
Yeah. Well, and that's an individual choice, but yeah. I think those artists who are here tonight and who, and those who are not, have responsibility. And I was emailing back and forth with Conor McGrady, who's the head of the Burren, right? And I said, "You need it. Great power. Say something." Great power comes great responsibility.
Exactly.
I have 2 boys, 8 and 9. I watch a lot of Spider-Man. Anything else? Well, my door is always open, metaphorically and physically, right? Please come see me. We'll grab a cup of coffee. We'll talk. We'll see where we want to take the place, and let me know. It's your motto. It's not my motto. It's your motto.